Hello and welcome to the latest and greatest UK OSINT community webinar. I'm Aaron Roberts, aka Aaron CTI, and I am absolutely delighted here today by Joshua Richards from the OSINT Group. You're welcome.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about how we're going to use open source intelligence to capture the worst villains from the FBI's most wanted list. And Joshua is going to put himself at great danger as he demonstrates all the great techniques he's. This is a really fascinating presentation. I think everyone's going to get a lot from it. And I'm just going to pass straight over to Joshua to run wild with it. Questions at the end.
Okay. Today we'll be talking about OSINT techniques to find the FBI's most dangerous fugitives. As you'll see throughout, it's not specifically about the FBI, but the FBI is who I like talking about because they have a lot of stuff which helps you getting into this kind of work. Firstly, a bit about me. As Aaron already introduced, I'm Joshua Richards, co-founder of the OSINT Group, do a bit of merchandising at UK OSINT community, and I've been in OSINT for over 9 years. If you do some OSINT into me, you will see I was probably around 15 years old then. So I did this long before I ever started doing it professionally. It started out as a huge hobby of mine, and I always kept that going every day since. And also former law enforcement. And you might know me by my Twitter username, AccessOSINT, but sadly, I've been very inactive there since joining the police before. I need to get back into that.
You really do.
I do. Okay, so as a quick overview of what we'll be going through in this presentation, we'll start off with a quick introduction, going through things like the benefits and some of the warnings that we need to go through before you start doing this kind of work. We'll look at some OPSEC and operational security considerations. We'll be looking at the FBI's most wanted list and some others that are out there as well. We'll look at finding resources because that's what I actually am doing this presentation for. It's not about finding FBI fugitives. It's about using that as a way to practice and to find new resources that you can use in your other investigations too. Because lots of us know about these big people search websites, but we don't look into the more specific resources that are out there. For example, in specific counties and states in the USA and in other places of the world as well. We'll then look at a few different case management systems or platforms, and then go through some final warnings and reminders before you get going into this. And finally, some extra research that you can go look into after this presentation. So starting with some of the benefits of searching fugitives. The first benefit is that there's thousands of them to pick from. There are sadly so many of them in the world across all the different fugitive wanted lists in the UK, the US, just Europe in general. There's a lot out there. Another benefit is that there's lots of different types, and that is things like cybercrime, violent crimes, various things of that nature. So if you wanted to get into the more cybercrime route or investigating it, then you can look into those kinds of fugitives as they're the ones who you're going to want to be practicing on if that's the kind of work you want to do. Rather than then violent crimes, those are going to be different kinds of people. And if you're looking to go into law enforcement, for example, and investigate those types of people, then this could be better practice for you to go after those ones. The thing that I like about this kind of work to do as practice is that there's no time constraints. You don't have deadlines like you do in your real investigations. Sometimes it can be good to set yourselves time constraints as that way of practicing, but in general, it's good because you don't have that pressure. You can just take your time, be creative. As the next point there says, freedom for creative thinking. You can just think outside the box, think of all these new techniques that you've never gotten to try out before, and just try them because, there's no time limits here. There's no one telling you, oh, like there's no time for that. You don't need to do it. You can try basically what you want. And then, like I already said, ability to experiment with new ideas and possibly some big rewards. That's another benefit of the FBI. They have some very big rewards, but I'll mention that a bit more later on. So some general warnings and considerations before we get into this. There's a reason these people are on these websites. They are most wanted fugitives, and they are generally seen as being a threat to public safety. So some things you might want to consider before deciding to get into this way of practicing is that you could uncover distressing crimes. Whether it's cyber or like the violent crimes or the many, many other things out there, you never know what you could come across. So you need to be prepared for that possibility. And if that's not something you're comfortable with, then don't get into it in the first place. You also need to think, do you have good OPSEC in place? Because in the next slide, we're going to have a quick look at some operational security, procedures and things like that. But do you have good OPSEC? Because if not, again, you never know what really could happen in the future. Are you going to find a fugitive and somehow, through whatever way, let's just say that they find out about you? Can they now find you, and are you putting yourself in harm's way by not having good OPSEC? Are you, competent enough with your OSINT skills that you're not going to interfere with the FBI or whichever law enforcement agency it is, their official investigations? Because if you go doing something like you look into data breaches and you find a fugitive's password and you go logging into their accounts, for starters, obviously very illegal. And also that could be pinging up on the, FBI systems that, oh, this fugitive has logged into their Facebook account, and then they'll be coming to knock on your door. So definitely don't want to be doing things like that. And another consideration, remaining passive only. If you go finding a phone number of the fugitive's family members, don't go calling them up to ask them questions. Again, so many reasons for that. There could be things like, it could be distressing for them. Again, it depends on the cases, but it could be distressing for the family. Maybe one of those family members is actually harboring that fugitive, and you'll be, kind of uncovering that, and they could panic based on that. You could make them move, and that could very much interfere with the FBI's investigation. So many reasons. Just it's a lot better to keep it passive, use your OSINT skills, and again, just using it as practice. So some very quick OPSEC considerations. Like I said, it is very quick because OPSEC could be a whole entire webinar in itself. But these are some of the main considerations that I wanted to cover. So firstly, false persona accounts. That's one of the main things for me that I think is really important, because that means that they will not be able to uncover your name and your identity if you make certain mistakes. Like, for example, if you accidentally send someone a friend request or accidentally like their profile picture, anything like that. Even with LinkedIn, of course, you can just view their profile and LinkedIn will tell them that you viewed it. So having your own false persona account with a different name and different identity is going to really help you in those cases where you've, made an OPSEC kind of, well, not an OPSEC, but made a mistake, clicked something that you shouldn't have, and then you are covering yourself from the consequences that could come of that.
So important.
Yeah. We then have VPNs, virtual private networks. So that will be covering and obfuscating your IP address. So especially if you're looking into more of the cybercrime kind of fugitives, then who knows, they could have their own website set up where if you view their website, they're collecting up your data, like your IP address and other system details. So by using a VPN and a reliable and secure VPN, then you're covering yourself from that so that they cannot identify anything more about you. We always say that, VPNs, like if you have an IP address, if they have your IP address, okay, they can't do too much. They can maybe find a general location. They can do some different things, but generally they won't be able to do too much. But when you're talking about cyber criminals, it's not really the case, because there are ways that they can find your data. If they social engineer or have access into the internet service providers, they can search your IP address, and that will be connected to your name, your home address, your phone numbers, and other things like that. So when they don't care about the law, it absolutely is dangerous for them to have your IP address, as well as all the attacks they could potentially do. Then we also have unique devices or virtual machines. So this is a good overall kind of consideration, but again, especially with cybercrime, where those people may have, malware laying out there for you to find, then you're going to want to have your own unique device specifically used for researching. Don't have a personal computer that you're then looking into these fugitives with, because you could get malware onto your device and they could steal all of your files or just damage your computer in some way. It's just better all around to have a unique device that you can section everything off, and then it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think it's still worth touching on it that when you're creating false persona accounts, not using a virtual machine and a VPN is quite important for generating the accounts and the ever use. I would say operationally, because things like virtual machine VPNs, that's suspicious activity quite often, at least from the point of view of the social media company, the average user of those platforms kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that rings alarm bells. Once you've established the accounts, you've aged them a little bit, they are purposes there to be used, then you can start using it. Log in from virtual machine, look, raise those flags. I think that's something to always bear in mind. I think we're very quick to say, use a VPN, use a virtual machine, and then people go, "Well, why is my account dead?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and creating accounts is again like such a huge topic in that there's so many things changing with the different platforms, with how they detect bots and how they detect fake accounts. Like a good thing with LinkedIn, I can't remember who said it, but a good idea is, instead of coming up with like Bob the astronaut on LinkedIn, like something super random that you think, okay, this is really far away from my identity. Like, no, on LinkedIn, the whole point of LinkedIn is recruiters finding people who are looking for jobs. So make an account as a recruiter. And then if you view someone's profile, they won't be suspicious that a recruiter has viewed their profile, because that's the whole point of LinkedIn. If something like a chef goes to view your profile and you're like, a real estate agent, then that's a bit more suspicious. So try thinking of those things as well before you're creating your accounts.
And I'm going to self-plug here, but I wrote a blog about creating burner accounts 3 or 4 years ago. It's over on my website, aaroncti.com. And I still use the exact same methodology today for creating accounts, and I so far haven't lost.
Nice. That's an accomplishment.
I know, right?
Okay, but yeah, so another thing that you need to consider here, and I briefly touched on it in the last slide, but what if you were to, for example, locate someone or even just make one of these OPSEC mistakes first, and they find out about your identity from whatever it may be, maybe an account of yours that you're using. Can you be identified, your actual identity in itself? When they have that, can they find you in public records to find your home address, where maybe your family is there, things like that? And would your family be safe? You as well, because that's a very, important thing to consider here. I mentioned that this is just for practice, but if you do it, you are searching real fugitives who, again, are on those websites for a reason. So it is very important to make sure that you're comfortable with all of this and make sure that you do have the OPSEC in place before you start any of this. There's definitely no rush to start it. Make sure that you're all good first. Okay, so why are we looking at the FBI's wanted list? Some of the reasons that I like it is that, again, there's hundreds, if not thousands of fugitives there that have been across the years as well. Some have obviously now been found and taken off, but there's at least hundreds of fugitives on there all the time. I've already mentioned there's various different crime categories that you can target. It gives us a good amount of information to start with. On those wanted posters, we get full names, aliases, a date of birth, location data, lots and lots of different things like that. And then large rewards as well. So there's all different kinds. You could have something which is, $5,000, or all of these people on the top 10 most wanted list, and now they all have rewards of $250,000. I believe it used to be 100,000, but recently they upped it to $250,000 if you locate one of these fugitives. So, again, I wouldn't recommend doing it because of that, because it's a hard task, but it's a really good way to practice. And then, maybe if you get lucky and you do find something, it could be a very good payday at the end as well. Another thing that I think is quite cool about the FBI is that they actually have their own API for their wanted list. So I know lots of us in OSINT all love our Python. So they actually have the API that you can use with Python to make whatever you want. You can make, documents, spreadsheets, and all sorts of things. So the one on the side that I have here is actually just a Word document that I created using a Python script, because there's Python modules where you can make it export data into a Word document and a PDF and things like that. So I just made it export a mugshot of the fugitive, their full name, the text which says how much of a reward they have on them, and then the URL to their wanted poster as well. And I think there was around 144 pages of just fugitive after fugitive, every single one of them with a reward. Something that I also really liked is that I could import all of that data into a spreadsheet. So this one that I have here is on Microsoft Excel. And as you can see, I just imported it. We have a column for the names. We have some of the mugshots. And with Excel and also Google Sheets, which I'll show in the next slide, there's functions that you can use to actually make it display and render that image. So this was just a URL, but now it actually shows you the image because I used that image function. So you can make it look a lot nicer with things like that. Then you have the rewards text, the date of birth, aliases, and there was lots of other information that just isn't shown in here as well. But this one's Excel, and then this one is Google Sheets. So again, anyone can go and use Google Sheets for free. And it's pretty much the same. Again, I have the photos, the names, all of the details. And in this one, I actually extracted out just the value of the reward and not all of the other text. So now that it's only the value, I can actually use this icon at the top to filter as well. So this is now filtered to show the top rewards. So these people have $10 million rewards, but you can filter it in any way that you want. You can also do things like, potentially filtering dates of birth for, I don't know, searching specific like ages, or if you had like a record set that you find like birth records within a certain year range, you could find people who were born within that range to try out your resources with. People in different countries, loads and loads of different information. And I even hyperlinked then over here. Instead of having a huge FBI link, it just is a nice hyperlink which says more info, and that would take you to their wanted poster. So yeah, you can do lots of stuff with that data from the API and basically make your own fugitive like dashboard and just, have a look through. You could, use conditional formatting to like check off which ones you've already looked at, and it will make the whole, row red or something. You can do whatever you want there.
Really interesting use case, I think, kind of information. And then,
Yeah,
like you say, using it almost as baseline training self and practicing.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mentioned earlier that it's not just the US, of course, there's lots of other fugitive lists out there. So, for the UK OSINT community, we have lots of UK ones like the National Crime Agency. They have a wanted list. There's also Crime Stoppers. I believe Crime Stoppers does sometimes offer rewards, but the National Crime Agency, I don't believe does. But again, it's not really the point of it. It's more just being able to practice, find new resources that we can use to find information on these people. And ultimately, if you did find one of these people, I think the story of that is a lot cooler than, a small reward anyway. Like the story of being able to say that you found like a fugitive is really cool, and that's worth it. But yeah, there's lots of others as well. You can look into, Interpol, like red notices. Europol has a wanted list. There's loads and loads out there, even more in the US as well, like the US Marshals, the DEA, Secret Service, all have wanted lists that you can look into. So now let's go into finding and identifying some new resources. This one here is someone from the current top 10 most wanted list, Donald Eugene Fields. And as you can see, this is part of his wanted poster. So we already have loads of information to start with, like the full name. We have aliases, a date of birth, hair color, height, like occupations, where he was born, everything like this. And underneath the wanted poster, it gives extra details as well. Like, for example, it mentions here, Donald Eugene Fields II was last known to reside in Franklin County, Missouri. He has family in Missouri and Kentucky, and he was born in Kentucky as well. It shows down here. He is known to visit casinos and has traveled to Florida in the past. So we already have lots of different locations there that we can look into. We have Franklin County in Missouri, we have Kentucky, and we have Florida as well. So we can now try to find resources which are in these places, because you'll see that you actually can find loads of really good resources at the county level and also the city level, state level, not just US wide like we often use. So where do we start now? When looking at US fugitives, usually I start with something like court listener. I believe it is or was also called recap because the US court system is called PACER. And that's where you can search all the federal documents, like federal court documents and things like that. And that's called PACER. So PACER backwards is recap, and that's what they did name this previously. And the whole point of Court Listener is that you can download their free browser extension. And when you're using that, anyone who purchases an official PACER document, that gets archived into Court Listener. So you basically give permission for that to happen. But even if you don't do it, we can still search Court Listener and see if any other users have purchased any documents that we need. So for example, you could now search in this search bar for Donald Fields, Donald Eugene Fields II, and you will find the federal court records for his cases. Now, if I go into one of those that I found, we have all of these different documents, and there's loads more if you look around. And you can see that most of them say buy on Pacer. So those ones have not been purchased already by a court listener user. So you would have to actually go and buy those yourself on the official Pacer website. However, the top one says just download PDF. So without even signing into anything, we can just download this official court records document and read every detail that is in there. And this is actually a search warrant sent by the FBI to Google. And Google gives back information about some email accounts that, the fugitive and some associates have. So that's huge information that you may not find anywhere else other than in these official documents. I haven't shown the actual document here, but some of the things that you can find in here are names of course, the fugitive, but also family members and associates, email addresses, phone numbers, home addresses, license plates and VINs of vehicles, social media, and general case details as well. There's an insane amount of information in just this one document alone. And look how many others there are as well.
OSINT gold mine.
Exactly. And it's good because it's an OSINT gold mine for us, but it's stuff that we never could have possibly found before because it's private data from Google that they have returned. So yeah, it's insane. So some of the stuff, this of course is a very small mind map. It does not anywhere near cover all of the possibilities of what you can do. But just from some of the stuff that I found in that court record, like I said, we have names. Now you can go and search those in public records, social media, data breaches to find additional data that we can now go search. We can search the emails on OSINT Industries to find the accounts that they're associated with. I've gotten really cool stuff for like fugitives with this. Data breaches, once again, data breaches could be with all of these categories, honestly. And domain whois, finding if they have ever set up any domains. Because with Hooksy, for example, you can do the reverse whois and search an email to find the domain. We then have phones. So again, OSINT Industries, things like Wigle. And if you've used Wigle, you will probably say you cannot search a phone number on Wigle, and that is true. But, there's certain ways that you can still use that information. Like if you add a phone number to your contacts book on a unique phone that does not connect back to your identity, of course, if you connect that phone number to your contacts book and you have an iPhone or an iOS device and so do they, it should come up saying that you can FaceTime them. So you then know that they also have an iOS device. When you know that, you can go on Wigle, and I'll show a screenshot of this later. You can go on Wigle and search for like Donald's iPhone, because that's the default name on an iPhone. And you could then potentially find hotspots where he has activated his hotspot in the US or anywhere else in the world where he may have gone. We then have license plates, of course, go find like the VINs and other vehicle details, home addresses. We can look into who lives there in public records, maybe who sold them the house, things like that. Mapping with satellites. And I really like actually looking at Bing because on Bing, if you activate the traffic view, you can see things like traffic cameras there on the map. And you could potentially look at the traffic cameras, which may be around properties of interest. Again, Wigle to see if there's any hotspots within those properties. And then, of course, social media, looking back at photos, visited locations that they've checked into, and also historic posts, because there's lots of times where actually just a few days ago, I was looking into somebody and they had a completely private Facebook account. It said this account is locked down. You couldn't even like click on the profile picture or do any of that. But when I got their Facebook ID, I could still run a search using that ID. And I found loads of posts that they have done in groups, which are not private. And also their marketplace profile. I could find everything they've ever uploaded onto Facebook Marketplace. And there was a lot of stuff, even though they have a locked private Facebook account. So stuff like that is really cool. And again, why we need to practice these skills so that we're just aware of them and you can then use them in your real investigations as well.
I think that as you've mentioned around Wigle and phone number, FaceTime thing, I think that's a really clever like chaining together of different bits of. I think that's the kind of thing where a talk like this is really brings so much value because that's the kind of thing somebody posts in. They'd be like, "Oh, Wigle does this thing." Phone number, I might find this info, but then that sort of awareness and that, actually, if you ever suddenly, okay, my target is using this specific type of device, and it might be helpful in a case like this, or it information that at least discount other accounts you might find. Oh, they don't use that Samsung. So we are digging too much further down that road.
Yeah. And there's even some things like with OSINT Industries, again, like you could search an email and when it finds the Google account, sometimes it now shows you a device that was connected to that Google account. So that again is this thing which can help you know what kind of devices they may be using and what data you can then find on Wigle.
Yeah.
So next we have some county specific records. This one here is for Franklin County because this is what was mentioned from the FBI on their wanted poster as where he last resided. So when you search Franklin County property records, for example, or you could even now search Franklin County assessor, you find these records. And this is stuff that you may never find on That's Them and these other US-wide people search records and people search websites. So this one here, we've got the full address. Of course, it's all redacted from like I've done that, but we have the full address. We have the name of the owners of this address. We have a property report, and that shows us things like floor plans. And some of this, like, it might not be useful to us in the fugitive investigation. But again, the whole point of this is to practice and to find new resources which could be useful to you. As in my business, one of the things that we do is vulnerability assessments. So we will be showing people what is out there about them. And we very often find these floor plans and things which could be useful to, burglars, however you say that word, who may want to go to that property and get a good idea of the whole, surroundings, which room is where, everything like that before ever stepping foot near it. And so stuff like that is very good and useful for people to know about. So we found this now. Maybe it's not useful to the fugitive, but you now know about it for other investigations. And maybe your other investigation is for someone outside of Franklin County, but now you know this kind of data exists at the county level. So now when you find someone's address, just search for what county that's in, look on Google for whatever county it is, Washington County property records, and you will usually find exact same websites as these where you can search for your subject of investigation and find most of this same kind of data. Another thing on the Franklin County Assessor website, which is completely new to me. I literally only found out about this like last week, which is really annoying because it makes me realize the years of data I must have missed by not knowing about this, is the personal property search. So I've known for years about the real estate searches at the county level, but never about this personal property search. Because with this, I could search for the subject's name or even just their address, and it's showing me things like the actual personal property that they own, like vehicles and boats and trailers, things that I've never found. Like I've never found someone who owns a boat until I started using this website. And it literally just tells me without signing up, without paying, just shows me this person owns a boat. This is the value of it and everything else. In this case here, it's just two vehicles. And we can even go back through the years and see as those vehicles change, you can see when they would have sold certain vehicles and things like that. But this is just for Franklin County. Like I mentioned in the last slide, now that we know this data exists, we can now search it in other counties as well. So this one is the exact same thing, but in Washington County. And this one actually even shows us partial VINs for those like vehicles and trailers and other things like that. And one of the associates of a fugitive I was searching before, I actually did find that he owned a boat and other stuff like that, which was just cool to me because I've never found that stuff prior to this data.
Absolutely fascinating. 'Cause in the UK, this kind of information just doesn't exist. At least not publicly like this.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Okay. Another type of county record is these, and this goes by, some different names. I think in the URL it says like integrity, and you can look at, just property records and different things like that. But this one is for Phelps County, Missouri. And literally, you can see all of these property boundaries. All you have to do is click on one, and it brings up this little pop-up which shows the name and full address of like that property. That's insane to me. Like from the UK, I've just never seen anything like this. I think there might be some companies who charge a lot for this kind of thing in the UK, but this is literally just like a random free website. You go to, click on any one of these properties, and you just instantly get the name of who lives there. And then you can click more into the assessment information and collector information for even more data as well. Like that's insane that this is just freely available here. And again, you wouldn't have found it unless you go to the county records instead of, searching Missouri wide and things like that. But imagine this is, the property of the fugitive. And again, I don't recommend this for most people, but for example, if you were law enforcement and you needed to like reach out to all of the neighbors or something like that, this would be such an easy way to just find all of the names of the like official current registered owners and get all their names, search those to find like phone numbers and other things like that that you may need. You can easily contact them for whatever you need. Yeah. And like that exists in like not every county is going to have this, but it's surprising how many do have it because it just makes it so easy to find everything.
I feel like maybe tools like OpenStreetMap might be able to replicate some of the like, outside of the US.
Hmm.
Probably not to like this extent where you find. I
Yeah.
feel things like planning permission application, boundary line. That might be something that you could replicate at least partially.
Yeah. I think what was the name? Like something survey, like there's a survey kind of map for the UK, right? I don't know if that has like the boundaries or something.
Yeah, I think Ordnance
Or
Survey,
like
right?
ordinances. Yeah. I'm not sure, but yeah, even the UK has that kind of property record search, like land registry search, and you do have to pay for it, but even without paying, you can first like click on a map and it will show you the address of it. So that kind of helps you see the full boundaries of it before as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, never anything to that extent of what is in the US. So those are some of the county records. And again, that's just a small portion. This is why I recommend doing this as practice because you can spend hours just finding all the different resources that are out there for the different states and different counties and everything. And there's just so many, and it's insane. But this is an example of a state record. So this is in the state of Missouri, and it's looking for unclaimed property. So we can search things like a name, Donald Fields, and we get all of these different results for Donald Fields. And it shows us the full addresses of all of these entries. It shows us the value of, the unclaimed property. And in some of them, we even have co-owners. So we've got like family members' names there and things like that.
What
There
is
is
an unclaimed property?
It can be things like from banks, and I don't know all of the things which like qualify it as property, but it's not like just real estate like property. It's things like if they're owed money, maybe they overpaid for something in the US and like a bank owes them some money back. So you can find all of that there, and these websites kind of help you claim it back. There is a website I think called like Missing Money or something like that, and that's like US wide searches across. But this website in particular is Missouri specific. But yeah, it's very good for finding addresses and things like that, which sometimes aren't on those other people search websites as well. This one again is a state record, so Missouri Digital Heritage. With this, I just searched an example name of John Doe. And in these results, we get Missouri death certificates between 1910 and 1973. And we get lots of information. I have kind of blocked out lots of stuff here, but it does show things like the last four digits of a social security number, the full names and everything. And when you click view image, it actually shows you this image. I've blurred it a bit just to kind of hide random details, but you see like the perfect quality of these official like death certificates. They have others as well, like the birth certificates and things like that. And I actually found stuff related to fugitives in the past on, death certificates of maybe family members, and they might name the fugitive on there and lots of different information. Even things like it will show you the date of birth and birth location of the parents, and you might find more information about your fugitive in that other location as well. So there's loads and loads of applications where this data is useful. And again, this is Missouri specific. So if you started searching US birth records or US death records, you're not going to really come across this. You need to be looking into the specific locations that are relevant to your investigation. Another one which I found, which I really liked, is Missouri State Highway Patrol. Because again, lots of people, like I used to just search US criminal records, US traffic records, and things like that. But now, actually going into Missouri Highway Patrol, we can see things like the online traffic crash reports. And underneath this screenshot is just a huge list of all the latest kind of traffic accidents. And it gives the full names of those people involved, vehicle details, exact information about what happened, location data, everything about it. And you can even search those records by name here. Like that just, doesn't exist for like the UK and doesn't even exist for US wide, I don't believe. There's certain ones where you can search like traffic records, but I've tried those and they don't include most of the results which are in here. So again, by knowing that you're looking at Missouri and then going to the specific websites, you get more relevant data. And you can see there's others here like boat and drowning incident reports. There's one somewhere where you can search arrest records specifically done by the Missouri State Highway Patrol. So traffic arrest reports, and that gives you lots of information there. So again, I would recommend just having a look into every little bit that you can, even doing some like I hate the word Google Docs, but Google Docs, like Google advanced searches and things like that, where you could, do like site colon and then put in this website and then in quotations just search like search registry or just search and things like that to find different pages on this website where you can run a search of something. And you'll be surprised the, amount of stuff that you find and new registry pages. Then again, we could go on for days talking about all the resources out there, but this is just a quick snapshot of some of the Missouri, resources that I found while looking into this one. So again, the Missouri Digital Heritage, Treasurer, some are US wide, like sorted by name. That literally shows social security numbers sometimes and loads of different like, birth records and lots of good information. Integrity, that's the one where you could just click on a property and see who lives there. Credentials of educators, so anyone who's certified to work in a school in Missouri there is, you can search those here. Loads and loads. You can pause and have a look through, but loads of information here for anything you need to search in Missouri. And then I mentioned Wigle. So this is just a quick snapshot of this. If you've never used it, I recommend just going and creating a free account and having a look through yourself. But you can see on the map here, all these red dots. These are things like mobile hotspots or just different networks which have been discovered by different receivers and then uploaded onto Wigle. And you can see here in the center all of the names of those networks. So sometimes these would be things like, again, it could be Donald's iPhone. If he had an iPhone with his real name, that's the default name of it. So you can actually search here in the SSID, Donald's iPhone, and see if within the boundaries of this map, so you could put it over Missouri or something like that, and see if you have found any of those. Something I will say about this is I've noticed recently that Wigle, I don't know if it's Wigle or the receiver who's uploading data, but where it usually is Donald's and then there's an apostrophe S, the apostrophe is sometimes, I believe, a percentage sign or maybe it's a question mark. So I don't know what that's about, but I would recommend using a wildcard in here to avoid any mistakes around that. Like you could type in Donald and then a percentage sign, because that acts as a multi-character wildcard, and then iPhone after it. And that will find you anything, whether it's an apostrophe or whether it's a question mark. It doesn't matter anymore because you've wildcarded it. So I recommend doing that to avoid those mistakes. But again, yeah, you could spend hours going through Wigle. It's very interesting to look through. But if you have locations of interest, you can search the addresses here and see what hotspots are within that address or have been. And once you've found them, you can search those MAC addresses in these pages here and actually find every other location where that has ever been identified. It could be in different states or different countries even, and you could find those. So once you've done all of this, we're now going to want to be able to sort that information. And actually, I will just say before we go on to this case management side, that I know all of those resources are, of course, US based because that was about someone from the FBI. But I do want to say that likely lots of the people watching will be from the UK. And those kinds of records can exist in the UK as well, because here in the UK, we have counties too. So one big example is like Aaron already mentioned, the planning permission documents. You can't just search UK planning permissions and type in an address. You need to go to the specific county where that address is, and they will have their own unique planning permission portal that you can then search and find planning permission records and documents. And those again will show you floor plans and sometimes even, I found landline numbers and names written on the plans. So those kinds of records right there for the UK too. I've spent hours just, again, doing advanced Google searches for like in URL gov.uk to find official UK government resources. And then I found things like in Wales, there's again, like a teacher registry. Like in Wales, they are forced to pay to be on that registry. If they're not on it, they're not allowed to work in a school. So they're forced to pay to be on a registry that is freely available for us to search. And that is, it gives their full name, the school where they work at, and like everything. And that's something which, again, I never knew about. And I've never heard anyone else really mention until I was looking into it for hours, just going through resource to resource and just finding stuff that I can use. And that was one of the interesting things that I found. So it's very possible to do all of this with the UK as well.
I think I've had investigations before where doing exactly what you just said about planning permission, finding email addresses and mobile numbers within that document.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy. Uh, yeah, we could just talk about resources all day. There's a website, I think it's called like Fix My Street or Fix Your Street, something like that, in the UK, and you can just find like complaints that people have done in the local areas, and those sometimes have pictures or videos showing the thing they're complaining about, and sometimes those can have license plates in the background. If it's like a neighbor who's took a photo of a pothole outside, that could have a license plate of a vehicle in it because you usually don't find that through Google since it's blurred out. There's all these little resources around which you can find, which can help. You just need to find them. But okay, yeah. So we need to now process all of this information into a way which we can actually visualize and use. Because otherwise it's just a huge like dump of information that you can't really do anything with. So there's loads and loads of different platforms and websites that you can use, but the ones which we'll talk about are Obsidian and Miro. These are two that I've been using recently and really like. Again, this will be a very, very quick kind of go through, a run through of these platforms because we have limited time here. But if anyone does want to discuss them after, feel free to contact me and I can show more screenshots and talk to you more about these. But this is a quick look of Obsidian. So on the left here is my kind of folder structure where I have things like the case details, and inside of that is some canvases, which you'll see in a few slides where I can embed PDF documents like the court records and, make like fancy notes based on those. Then I have a folder for Donald Fields where I have things like physical appearances. So I used an app called Face App where I could give him different hairstyles and different like facial hair and loads and loads of different variations of how he could currently look. And I just have all of those stored there. I have a physical profile. I'll show a screenshot of that next as well. I even looked into the psychology, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where I just wrote loads of stuff, like how he's going to be feeling, like the human need of belonging, where he cannot trust anybody because he has a huge reward on his head, like the psychological impact of that. I loved the idea of thinking about all of those things and how that could tie into how we should search for him, things like that. We have his normal kind of notes record, and that's what you see here. So the Donald Fields II note is where I've got all personal information, like I have his date of birth, birthplace and home addresses and loads of different information in there. Another cool thing is that you can add plugins. And one plugin, which is my favorite, is this map plugin. So now any address that I link in these notes actually gets added onto this map. And you can give it tags. So I've tagged this one with Fugitive House. So that means that it's a certain color and a certain icon on the map. But the best thing about it is that I have like 20 to 30 more people in this associates folder. And every address that I've put into every one of those notes all collectively gets added to the same map. So you have a huge overview of every location related to your investigation, all on this one nice interactive map. And if you click on an icon, it takes you to that note where it's written. So that's like a really cool thing about Obsidian.
This is an
Uh,
incredible use case for Obsidian.
yeah, 100%. Even things like fugitive needs, I was trying to think, okay, what does a fugitive need? Like to communicate, they need food, like water, they need shelter. Trying to think about each thing that they need and then what OSINT applications can be used and like techniques can be used to get ahead of that. How could you find where they're going to have shelter or like where are they going to get food? Are they using someone who's getting it for them? Are they going to the shops to buy food? Are they going to like, fast food places? Things like that that you can think about. And then another thing which I quite like is I downloaded a calendar plugin for Obsidian. So on the calendar, I've put just all the relevant dates that I've found. For example, birthdays of family members, like kids of the fugitives and things like that. You can put those because maybe on those birthdays, they will take a risk and go to visit them or contact them in some way. So stuff like that is just interesting to keep track of as well. So also on Obsidian, we have this graph view. It's a bit blurry here because if I zoomed in more, it would have shown all of the names and things like that. But basically what we have here, each node is a file, like the notes that I showed for Donald Fields. And this here is the note for Donald. And when I hover over it, it shows me all of the links to other notes which are related to this one. Because, for example, in this note here, I've also got a relationship section and I can link it to his parents, his kids, and different people like that, criminal associates, business associates. And each one of those notes which I link to are now linked in this different graph view. So that's a really cool way to just analyze the relationships and see who could be relevant based on who is connected to the most people, things like that. Then this here is a view of Obsidian Canvas. Again, I blurred it out so that the details aren't as visible, but this is the court record, which is public anyway. And literally all I had to do was get the URL to this document and just paste it into Obsidian Canvas. I didn't need to download it or anything. Just get the URL, paste it in, and it embeds it here. And then I could start writing in text boxes all of the important information from this document. And I've downloaded a plugin for highlighting, so I can highlight the important details of interest within those documents. So that just, helped me to view everything. And it also means that it's now searchable because there's a really good search in Obsidian, which just searches across your entire case, but it cannot look inside of this embedded document. So that's why I extracted all of the important points and now it's all searchable. But yeah, you can also do that with videos as well, as it mentions here. So if you get a link to a YouTube video and just paste it here, it just embeds the YouTube video for you here as well, which is another really cool feature. And then as you can kind of see here where I link the document to the different things, you can do that with entities, like just different entities, maybe you could add a picture of one like fugitive and then add a picture of their, I don't know, criminal associate. You can create a link between them and basically make a network chart showing you all the nice visualizations that you need. And then I believe next, here we have the physical profile that I mentioned previously. I've blocked out this because the human generator that I made kind of made him topless, and I don't want to get us demonetized by YouTube. But basically, I used generated.photos to generate a human, and with that, you can actually upload a face. So this is the actual face. It looks exactly like Donald Fields, the actual fugitive, but it's in a position where I can now easily label things like his tattoo, label the scars, and all of the other stuff that he has. It was just like a cool pose that way, like the position to show all of those things. I have the eye color, like the height, and all of this stuff. I just thought it looked cool. And again, that's not something I would ever have done in a normal investigation. Like, why? But in this, it's just for fun and to test it out, and now it looks quite cool, I think. But yeah, that's a use you can do for generated.photos with the human generator. Moving on from Obsidian, because again, you could speak for days about Obsidian. And by the way, if anyone does have any problems with that, I recommend joining the Obsidian Discord community, because anytime I've ever had an issue, I've asked there, and there's been loads of people who instantly help and fix the problem straight away. Usually they're like, why did you do it this way? And I realize, yeah, that was really stupid, and it's just fixed instantly. So that's a really good community to join, even just to see what other people are doing. Like I've seen people design really cool vaults. They call it a vault on Obsidian, like a folder. And then I've made mine look similar to that based on what they do. So I recommend joining that. The next one is Miro. And this is basically in a canvas. It's like Obsidian canvas, but we have a bit more customization here. So some of the features, like I said, infinite canvas, you can make it as much as you want. You never have to stop adding stuff. We can add templates. So if you wanted to make a mind map, there's already made templates for you to do that. You can collaborate, so you can add other emails and stuff into the canvas, so you can collaborate with your team or other friends who you're doing a fugitive investigation with, for example. You can integrate. Yeah, exactly. Uh, you can integrate hundreds of apps like Slack, for example. So, if you get anything here where you're getting alerted of something, you can integrate Slack and it will ping you in Slack. And customization. So I just really liked that, you can add in icons and then, make links between them. You can change the thickness and the colors of all of the links. You can see how this one, the text goes across the link, while down here it follows it. So you can customize it exactly how you want it. This, how this looks here, I actually took inspiration of this from Hunted. So I'm going to mention that at the end, but the Hunted Australia show is a really cool one, and they do their graphs like this, and I just thought it looks like a really cool style. So I did this fugitive one with that kind of style. But this table down here is again showing the personal property, showing all the vehicles and a boat and like all these different stuff that he owns, the properties that they're connected to, everything. And it's really interesting to be able to do this and visually analyze everything here. Lots of people like to use Maltego for this. I don't know. For me, I just prefer this because of how much nicer it looks visually. I don't personally use a lot of like the actual investigation things on Maltego, so I prefer having the visual aspect a lot better like this.
hurt me in the
So
soul.
yeah, sorry to disappoint him. Um, but yeah, that's what I said. Only one slide here for Miro. It's quite self-explanatory, and there's literally hours and there's hundreds of hours of videos of Miro tutorials out there. It's nothing special. You can just make your graphs, add integrations, and just do whatever you want. I just wanted to show how cool the graphs can look, and that, if you wanted to make your own of these, then that's very possible to do. So some final warnings and reminders, which we've covered. Again, I mentioned at the start, this is just for practice. And, it's for finding new resources that you can use, whether that's in the UK, the US, and just for trying out new ideas that you have. But of course, it does come with lots of risk as well. So you need to consider the risk level of searching each fugitive. Are you searching someone who's like a mafia boss? Probably not a great idea. Or, someone else who's like lower level. Ensure that you have good OPSEC in place prior so that, if you are, for whatever reason, identified, that they cannot really find where you are and identify your family, things like that. Like I said here, it's an opportunity to experiment without time limit. So, like I said, with my physical profile thing on Obsidian, it wasn't that useful, but it was just something cool which I wanted to try, and just to try out generated dot photos. That was a really good use of that human generator. So just give it a go with things like that. Sign up to different resources, try them out. If they're useful, then that's a win. But just make sure that you're not doing anything which interferes with the official investigations. Again, don't ever try logging into people's accounts. Even things like forgot password. That's a technique in OSINT which sometimes can be really good. Doing forgot passwords, typing in a username, and sometimes it will show you like a partial phone number or partial email address. But it's not a great idea usually, because you need to be extra sure that it's not going to send through an email to that person, because again, that can bring up kind of alarm bells to whoever's investigating it, or maybe you alarm like a family member of who's harboring them, things like that. It's not worth doing those things. You have to understand the risk of what you're doing at each stage. And if there's ever anything that you're concerned about from the OPSEC stage, or actually while investigating, anything like that, feel free to ask any questions in the UK OSINT community. Like, I'm in there, Aaron's in there, we're all in there and happy to help with anything. So always feel free to ask for any guidance there. Some final extras for you to look into. These are just things which I thought were quite cool. Is the TV show Hunted. This exists in many countries like the UK, the US had one. I think there was one recently in France, and the most recent one is in Australia. And they do it so much like bigger, I think, in Australia. It's insane. Yeah, I really like the Australian Hunted. And that's like what I said. I got the idea for the Miro kind of graphs from. That's what they used there. This is just a cool way to basically see the real techniques used by law enforcement, because the idea of this is that it's a game. There's normal people who sign up to go on the show. They go on the run from real investigators and like police and like ex-military and things like that. But you see it simulated. It's a real show, but they have to simulate some powers of the state like CCTV and cell dumps, so that it's like real police, but obviously they don't have those real powers. So you can see the actual techniques used. Like, if you were law enforcement, you could cell dump this area which they've been in, and this area, because maybe you found somewhere through your OSINT that you don't think the FBI knows about, but you don't have the power to do what they can do. So you compare your intelligence with theirs and their capabilities, and that can just help you with having extra knowledge. And who knows, that could help. And then the psychology side, like I mentioned in my Obsidian, I was doing things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, thinking about all of the things which make someone human, the like need for belonging, and like like love and like shelter and all these different things, and thinking, how does that apply to your fugitive that you're looking at? Because they're going to be so paranoid, they can't trust anyone. There's all these things which make it so much different from the average person you'd be searching. So that's really interesting to think about as well. I love researching how fugitives have been caught in the past. What are some common mistakes they make? How can you use OSINT to get ahead of those? Things like that is just interesting to look at. But yeah, that is it. Thanks for watching. And like I said, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask in the UK OSINT community or message me through LinkedIn, Twitter, and I'm always happy to talk about these things. Any advice or just discussions. And yeah.
Before we go, I'm going to ask, because I understand you're running some training in the UK in the next few weeks. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that and where people are coming up?
Yeah, so yeah, we have a training in person in Jersey next month. So October 15th and 16th. We'll be going through lots of the things I discussed today and a lot more. We'll be doing some challenges so that you can actually utilize these techniques and you'll be able to ask us any questions. It's also a really good opportunity for networking with both us and other like-minded people. So we'll have law enforcement and fraud investigators and lots of different people there. So if you are interested in that, feel free to, again, contact me through the methods I mentioned, or you can look on our website, theosintgroup.com. And there you can contact us through the contact form, and we will give you more information about that there.
Fantastic. And given what we've just witnessed here, there's going to be so much value over the course of training. So I'm jealous I'm not able to go.
Yeah. Thanks.
Joshua, thank you. That's an incredible presentation with, I think, so much useful information of a beginning in your OSINT journey with up seasoned practitioner, the ways in which you're winning the dots and leveraging, essentially very profitable
Yeah.
use cases for your investigations, but bringing it to, and the way it's being displayed, I think, is incredible. It's been a really fascinating presentation. There's a lot I'm taking away from it. I'm going to look at how I'm already, how could I evolve that? I might have a look at Miro as well, because I really love the visual aspects of OSINT and doing that link analysis.
Yeah.
So any way I can sort of play this information better that helps clients is going to be fantastic.
Mhm.
And I think the way we're looking at different aspect of this investigation, but what else can I do with that? What could I try over here? Like that creativity, so important, improving tradecraft, that a lot of people are going to really take so much value out of this. So thank you for your time. Thank you all for being in the UK OSINT community. And if you want to join the UK OSINT community, all you have to do is head over to our website, osint.uk/join, I believe is the URL, and simply fill in the form and you'll be welcome into Discord or into the Slack community based in the UK. Thank you for watching. See you at the next one.